Mark from the States, Mark from the States, it's Mark from the United States.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Mark from the States. How are we doing today? I am doing fantastic. I hope you are as well. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me today. Today I've got something special. I follow a guy here in the States, a historian. His name is Chris. His channel is called Vlogging Through History. And I've always watched his stuff and I've enjoyed it on my own. And then I got a suggestion to do one of his videos and I was just so happy. And because this is a guy that I watch all the time and I really think you guys will enjoy this. This is on Ypres Salient, Hell on Earth, episode 1. He's done I think there's 6 episodes on Ypres and just the history of all of it. So I think you will enjoy it. So let's dive into episode 1. Please support his channel and do your thing. I think you will because I really think you'll enjoy it. At least I hope you do. So let's get into it. Episode 1.
Welcome to Ypres, Belgium. Ypres is the French spelling. But here in the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, you're more likely to find it spelled I-E-P-E-R, pronounced Ypres. Of course, the British soldiers who fought here didn't use either name. They called it Wipers. Ypres is best remembered today as the town around which some of the worst fighting in all of human history took place. But the history of this place goes back to ancient times. A town on this site was raided by the Romans more than 2,000 years ago. And since that time, it's been fought over by the English, the French, even the Austrians. 800 years ago, Ypres had a population of around 40,000 people, making it one of the largest cities in all of Western Europe. It was even mentioned by Geoffrey Chaucer in his Canterbury Tales. For most of its history, Ypres has been known best for the cloth trade, and that was centered around the 13th century building, the Cloth Hall that you see behind me, which is the most famous of all of Ypres' landmarks. Most of that building was destroyed by artillery fire during the Great War, but it's since been rebuilt.
Wow.
During the course of the war, there were at least 5 distinct battles that were fought here. And each of those major battles could be broken down into multiple battles with names and identities of their own. The first Battle of Ypres in October and November 1914 produced 250,000 casualties. The second Battle of Ypres saw the introduction of poison gas to the Western Front in the spring of 1915, and that produced 100,000 casualties. The third Battle of Ypres, more often known as Passchendaele, was fought in the summer and fall of 1917 and may have produced as many as 800,000 casualties. The fourth Battle of Ypres, also known as the Battle of the Lys, was fought in April 1918 as part of the German Kaiserschlacht offensive, and that produced around 200,000 casualties. The last battle, sometimes known as the Fifth Battle of Ypres, was fought in the fall of 1918 and produced around 10,000 Allied and an unknown number of German casualties. And of course, between all of these battles, there's skirmishing, artillery duels, sniper fire, disease, and much more. Needless to say, Ypres earned its place in history as one of the deadliest places on earth, especially for British Commonwealth and German forces. So in this series, we'll be looking at snapshots within those battles, telling stories of some of the units and even individual soldiers who fought here. And of course, we'll look at some of those iconic places associated with each of these battles. One of the places you can clearly see the evidence of the destruction that happened here 100 years ago is here next to St. Martin's Cathedral. Behind me, you can see there are the remnants of the old cathedral, pieces of it that have almost been laid out like a cemetery, like a memorial, that shows parts of the cathedral that were never rebuilt. And then there's an entire building, an old chapel on the other side here that I'll let you take a look at in just a second, that also was never rebuilt. In the 1920s, as the town was being rebuilt, the work of remembering the fallen was also taking place. The town was home, at least temporarily, for many of the citizens of Britain and the Commonwealth who were here to build memorials and to carry out the work of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. Ypres also became a place of pilgrimage for the hundreds of thousands of families who lost loved ones in the Ypres Salient. Those people needed a place to gather, to pray, and to remember. And this chapel became a place to do just that. It's known as St. George's Chapel, named for the patron saint of England. It was built in 1927 and to this day remains one of the most important sites for remembrance and pilgrimage here. These men did not die in a vacuum, but they left behind families and a nation, multiple nations, who mourned their loss. And this place became one of those places where they could come and remember and honor them. And you see memorials to entire units or memorials to men from a particular town, and many memorials bloodiest and most awful places in the history of warfare. Well, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is location. It's a strategic crossroads, much like Gettysburg in the American Civil War. From here, the German army could march on the strategic coastal towns of Dunkirk, Calais, Boulogne. It was also one of the last major obstacles to complete control of Belgium for the Germans. So there were obvious strategic reasons for both sides to occupy the town. The Allies built their defenses around the outside of the town, and this created a salient, a bulge in the line that would be attacked by the Germans from three sides throughout the war. It's also important to note that the Germans held the high ground surrounding the salient, making it easier for artillery observers to locate targets. And it didn't take long for the casualties to mount in circumstances like that. Now, as for the horror of the landscape, the flooding and the mud that became so synonymous with battles like Passchendaele, 3rd Ypres, it's pretty simple. This is, like much of this part of Europe, an area with very low ground in terms of its relation to sea level. And the water table is high, meaning you don't have to dig down very far and you hit groundwater. So when it rains, and it rains here a lot, it doesn't take much to cause flooding. Now, over the centuries, the people of this land had built systems for keeping the ground relatively dry. And you can see a lot of those systems today. But as with many other things, the incessant artillery fire had destroyed those systems. And so in addition to the death and destruction that was found on many Great War battlefields, Ypres was also known for the mud. And the mud just wasn't some annoyance that had to be dealt with. It was deadly. Men would get stuck in the mud in areas of no man's land, and no one could risk exposure to help them. They would sink until they drowned in the mud. This also meant that attacks had to go over these duckboard pathways that were built over the mud, which provided easy killing lanes for enemy machine guns and artillery. It was a recipe for slaughter on a scale witnessed only a handful of times in human history. And it's also a big part of the reason why so many of the men who fell here were never identified or never found at all. I'm now in a very busy, very loud Lille Gate, and this is a cool place to come because you get to see the original Imperial War Graves Commission signs. They're all now the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, but these are some of the originals. You have to remember that in the years after the war, there were thousands of families who wanted to come and see the final resting place of their loved one. But you don't have GPS. You don't even really have maps at the time that can give you accurate information. And so all you knew was to go to Ypres, and then from there, try and find your way. And so these signs were placed all over the place, and you see them all over the Western Front to this day. You'll see signs telling you where cemeteries are, where prominent parts of the battlefield are. And those are just some of the originals of that. This is also a really cool place, the Lille Gate, because again, you get a really nice sense of the original fortifications that existed around this city. It's got this moat that surrounds everything. It's about as medieval castle-like as you can get, but it's actually dated to the later, to a later time period than the medieval time. And there's also the Ramparts Cemetery up here, and we're going to go take a look at that. I've said it before, but one of the things I love about British and Commonwealth graves is the ability for families to put messages on the bottom. I love this one. He could not have had a better end, but as we see it, it came too soon. So both sharing their grief, but also their pride in his service at the same time. And I want to find out the circumstances of Lieutenant Moxley's death, if I can. T. Hopkins, Row of Fusiliers, Christ will link the broken chain closer when we meet again, from mum, brother, and sisters. And they could not ask for a more beautiful place to lie today, right here in the Ramparts Cemetery. Winston Churchill said of Ypres, quote, "A more sacred place for the British race does not exist in the world," end quote. He proposed that the town be left in ruins as a permanent memorial to what happened here. Of course, the people of the town disagreed, and reconstruction began, but a permanent memorial was placed here, where hundreds of thousands of British and Commonwealth soldiers passed as they exited the town and headed to their deaths. It's known as the Menin Gate. And later on in this series, we'll take a closer look at the gate, its history, and its significance to this day. I want to invite you to join me on this journey as we learn more about the people and places associated with the Battle of Ypres.
So good. So good. Just please go and support Chris's channel, Vlogging Through History. There's a few channels that I watch on a regular basis, and his is one of them. And I just enjoy the way he presents. He does original stuff like this, but he also does, like, he'll do history-themed reactions and stuff like that, and it's just if you like history, it's entertaining, and I've learned quite a bit from Chris. So, and he's an English football fan. I don't remember which team, but there's that too. But he does do a lot of Civil War history, and but he does. I mean, he's just enjoyable. So I implore you to go to his channel and support him, and just watch some of his stuff. And I hope you like it. But we will continue on this because I have not seen the series that he's created. So the next one is Hell on Earth, Hill 60, I think. So that's one we'll watch the next time. But I hope everybody's happy, healthy, and safe. And thanks again for allowing me to introduce something new. And I hope everybody is having a great day. Please take care of one another, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
Mark from the States, Mark from the States, it's Mark, and he's from